I'm Sudeepthi Dondapati, working as an associate professor in the Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. I'm here today to discuss and to share my views and ideas on interview skills for placements. So now, this is a very relevant and highly important topic in the present day situation. So wherever you go, so they are talking about interview skills for placements. So are there any special skills that are required for getting recruited in companies? Yes. Are they different from speaking skills? A kind of part of it. Are they different from writing skills? Of course, though they are not part of it. And are they different from interactive skill? Or are they different from communication? No, partly and likewise. So what I would say that it's not completely different, at the same time not completely the same. So there are some procedures and methods you will understand or you will have to comprehend in order to gain complete confidence and clarity, and this kind of a kind of input will definitely help you understand the concept of interview skills for your placements. So interview skills for placements part 1. So let me say that with a great mood and happy mood, you are very agile and you go to an interview, and definitely you are a successful person who is very dedicated and who is very diligent at the same time. But you are not aware of certain pragmatics and certain skills that are required for interview. So then you will definitely won't be able to accomplish your target and won't be able to get recruited for your company. So you will have to understand the concept of interview, and then if you know the concept of interview, and definitely you can achieve your target. And there are some important steps you can follow, and there are so many ideas I have brought for you in today's discussion. So without wasting much time, let me take you to the slide. Now, what is it? What is this word interview? The term interview is a French word. Yes, you're right. If you think this is not your own Indian or English word, it is borrowed from French language. It's a French word which means sight between. Sight means seeing. So interview actually means to see the other person. So when you say interview, so inter is between two and view is to be able to see. So to be able to see and to have a conversation or to have an interaction, between, this kind of interaction between two people. So altogether, what I want to say is it actually means to see the other person. Interview means side between, right? And that you have understood. And now, any purposeful interpersonal communication between two individuals or sometimes more that is required, and that happens in today's setting. So any purposeful interpersonal communication between two parties or between two individuals, sometimes more. So this could happen between two people or more than two. And it's an oral tool. So talking about this interview, it's an oral tool to test a candidate's traits for any job requirement. So it's an essential tool to test a candidate's traits for a job requirement. So you happily look at the other person with a gentle and cheerful smile on your lips, and you start with a handshake, and you undergo this interview procedure. So now you will have to understand the two terms, interviewee and interviewer. Interviewee or interviewees are like a people or is a person who are appearing or who is appearing for an interview. So it's called interviewee. And the person who are taking your interview is nothing but an interviewer or interviewers. So if I am interviewing you, I'll be an interviewer, and if you are interviewed by me, you will be an interviewee. So take notice of these two words. Now, whether it's a group discussion or a speech or a presentation, it is actually a mingling of both verbal and non-verbal. So, so could be kind of like you make use of your body language too. So whether it's a group discussion or a single presentation or a speech or a presentation, it is a amalgamation, conglomeration of both verbal and non-verbal language. And then orality is involved here in this interview. At the same time, this orality is coupled with your non-verbal skills. So orality is coupled with your non-verbal skills. So where your verbal language is is something that go along with your non-verbal. So both non-body language, non-verbal language is also very important, and both go together. A person reads for so many years and his entire learning is judged just in half an hour. A person reads for so many years and then just in half an hour, his learning or his efficiency or his intelligence is judged in just a half an hour. So that is the effect of interview. So even if you are an elite educated person, if you are unable to, even if you have many qualifications, but then in your interview, if the performance is very poor or you lag, definitely you will not be able to win your success, or you won't be able to reach your success. So for that reason, so you will have to understand all these pragmatics. So those who prepare for the interview become successful. So when you prepare for the interview, note this point and underline this point. Those who prepare for the interview become successful, and this is very important. Very important. Those who prepare for it is very important. Now, let me bring to your attention the quotation of Pollen. He says, an interview may be regarded as a systematic method by which a person enters more or less imaginatively into the inner life of comparative strangers. Yes, it is just an entry of, a person, in for example, could be a person who is very stranger, and now I enter your inner life, and you're a comparatively, like you are a stranger, comparatively you're a stranger. So this kind of entry into, or entry, when you have this kind of like involvement and this kind of interaction with others through your involvement, and this can easily happen in this interview. So what I want to say is, it is very systematic. It's not only the test of your oral skills, but also other skills. So what are the other skills? We will discuss. Because when the interview is held, the interview examines you mentally. He examines you mentally. Not only that, he understands your words or your ideas or your content through your oral interaction, but also he will understand your mind. So it is the side between two people. So the other party enters your inner life. Remember the definition given by Pollen. He says, like, I enter your inner life, through this platform. So a person can easily understand this kind of mindset easily through this interview. And it's not whatever is written on your face, but there are different methods, students. There are different ways to judge interview, because through an interview, the interviewers usually try to enter more or less imaginatively into the life of others. So they come up with different strategies. They come up with different ways. They try to judge. And through this interview, the interviewers enter more or less imaginatively into the life of others. So now you will have to understand what are the types of interviews. So now you understood the definition or the meaning of interview or the essence of interview. Now I want you to understand the types of interview: job interview, information interview, persuasive interview, exit interview, evaluation interview. So job interview, are these different? Yes, they are different. Now, job interview is something, this is very common and natural, where you talk about this job interview very often, where you attend for any placement or for any job, for your career interview, you will have to undergo this. Whereas informational interview is different. Information interview is something where you are trying to collect the data you have and you have less amount of time. So what you do is you have a kind of telephonic interview. So very often we see this kind of telephonic interview these days. So this kind of information interview is happening somewhere nowadays. So everywhere, like not all the time they have this kind of information interview, but at times they do have. So that because of this, so many, because of this digitalization and this globalization, things have improved, and easily one can have an interview over Skype, and you see many companies have they're conducting online interviews. So that is important, right? Next, another interview type of interview is persuasive interview. So we saw job interview, information interview, and then now persuasive interview. This is something that you persuade others. You persuade them. You persuade others in order to convince or in order to make them get convicted of your speech or of your point that you are trying to say. So what happens is, like, the moment you drive your thoughts or the moment you drive others' minds, and definitely you can persuade them, and then you will be able to understand the kind of expectations that they have. This is very important, learners. This interview is very important. Why? Because this kind of interview is useful for for training the parties or the professionals in respective companies, so that they can persuade their juniors or the new recruits, or to convince the what is target audience. So they get kind of sort of training in this interview so that they can easily be done. So things get done easily. So to persuade others or to persuade them. Next, this kind of interview can be done telephonically or physically. So this can be done either through telephone or else physically. So either ways can happen. And sometimes you will witness miscommunication. Yes, this is a shortcoming. So definitely, and this is a disadvantage. Sometimes you will miss kind of clear communication because of this. So that is why this persuasive interview is not all the time preferable. And there are situations where you need to convince a person. For that, you need to persuade the person. So you have to convince them and you need to persuade them. For that matter, you will need, or you will have to undergo this kind of training, and which is very important. So this is also, so in such situations, what do? You actually have a persuasive interview. So where you have to persuade others, you will have this kind of interview, and recruits get trained. These are not related to job interviews. Note this point. These are not similar to job interviews, and this is definitely a different one. Next, exit interview. We discussed job interview, information interview, persuasive interview, and the other one is exit interview. Exit interview is something that this happens before you quit your job or when you're changing jobs. So when you leave your organizations, you will have a sort of facility of exit interviews. So he or she can always give some valuable input. So when a person who is working in any organization or in any institution, before he or she exits, they will have the company or the college or the school or any organization or the institution, they will have this kind of exit interview, and definitely they will conduct this, and where you can offer your valuable inputs. So when you leave some organizations, you will have this sort of interview, exit interview. So another one is different from this exit interview, that is evaluation interview. So evaluation interview is they will try to evaluate the project or the kind of work that you are in. So this can happen. It's like, somewhere in between when you are working. So at times, certain new policies, certain new products being launched and being announced. So that's where you work, and some project that is in progress. So a committee is assigned and they are asked to evaluate the projects. And at this time, they will have this kind of evaluation interview with the workers or professionals. So time, difficulty, and many other factors are discussed here. So what are some time constraints? So what are some difficult challenges, and what are the other factors that are really posing problems or posing danger to this particular smooth functioning of any work or project. So at this situation, they will have this kind of evaluation interview. Right. And also, when you have this evaluation interview, there happens like you have so much of a kind of intensive, refreshing, and vigorous kind of brushing, interview knowledge or interview skills. So you will have this kind of evaluation interview, informational interview. Like if you have this knowledge of these types of interviews, definitely you'll be able to go through these phases. And all of a sudden, you do not know about evaluation interview, you do not know about information interview, or you know about this job interview, but you do not know about this persuasive interview. So you join a company, you join a place, any company or in college or in a school or any organization, and suddenly they conduct this kind of evaluation interview. So what do you do? So how do you do? And where exactly you go? So that is where you have to understand the role and significance of this evaluation interview. This is especially for evaluating your progress. So with a team, so there is a team assigned, and they will communicate with you. They will talk about the pros and cons, they will talk about the problems, and they will also evaluate the kind of products that are being launched, and some being announced, and sometimes some work so that is still under construction, or that is still under progress, or that is still in progress, or that is which is not in progress, can definitely be understood, or that definitely can be conducted through this type of interviews. And another interview we have is counseling interview. So counseling interview. So now we talked about evaluation interview, persuasive interview, job interview, or like it's another kind of interview. We just know without evaluation, persuasive, and information job interview. So the fifth one we have is like counseling interview. So what is this counseling interview? So this counseling interview may happen in the context of poor performance. And previously we saw in the evaluation interview, they review, they talk about the progress and the kind of progress that they have done. Whereas in this particular counseling interview, they talk about the problems of that employee, or their behavioral issues, or their behavioral like they are not very psychologically fit enough, or because of that they show misbehavior. So it may happen in the context of poor performance. So in the context of poor performance, definitely they're asked to appear or show yourself at the time of this counseling interview. So this may happen in any kind of bad performance or quality poor performance. So to motivate the spirit and motivate the morale, to motivate the behavior or character, to boost the morale of the employees. This kind of activity. Let me give you an example. You're working in a company where you have some issues, and that's why, and also due to this lack of efficient performance, so you're called to appear for this interview, and there they will boost up your energies, they will refresh your mindset, and they will strengthen your thinking system, they will strengthen your heart, they will motivate you, and all the demotivated employees can be motivated under this kind of counseling interview. And so when you do this, definitely you will show up a better result, a better performance, or a better what is like presentation. Definitely they will do it. And so you don't have to get shocked when you appear for this counseling interview. That is why we teach students to, in order to make themselves aware of these different types of interviews, like not only job interviews but also other interviews. And also there is another interview called conflict resolution interview. What is this conflict resolution? It appears very strange and it sounds very new. Yes, these are all types. So conflict resolution interviews, they are nothing but conflicts can only be resolved when there is an interview. So there is a notion that there is an impression that issues or conflicts or tussle between, or any kind of issue between two people or more than two people, they can sit and they can interact and they can resolve the matter very easily through this conflict resolution. So there is a team behind and they will talk about your problems, and in your company where you are facing any psychological or social or sexual or any kind of problems that women employees or men or gentlemen, whoever it is, like, so they share all their opinions, all their problems before the panel, and then they will bend down to show this a kind of good solution between the parties. And when they do that, definitely there will be 100% result. And another interview we saw till now: job interview, information interview, persuasive interview, exit interview, evaluation interview, counseling interview, conflict resolution interview, and now termination interview. So why is this termination interview? Is there a kind of termination interview? Yes, there is. So termination interview is like some employees, they unfortunately have to leave an organization before time. So at that time, they will conduct this kind of interview and they will ask them to leave the organization, where it happens very formally, but it is not always pleasing to appear for this interview, and it is also not unplanned, of course, and sometimes untimely interview, but it is not a planned interview. Students or learners or my dear audience, please understand that this kind of interview is, or it happens when the employees or the professionals unfortunately have to leave an organization before time. But sometimes they are recruited for a long time, but because of their poor performance or because of their behavioral issues or whatever issues they have, their behavior, misbehavior or misconduct on the basis of any of these issues, they will be terminated. And some professionals from some organization or some institutions or some companies have this kind of interview. So that is very, very important, and it is also second. Next, another important interview is disciplinary interview. So we saw termination interview, but this is also disciplinary interview. So what is this discipline? It is similar to counseling interview. Yes, you are right. It is similar to counseling interview. It's like when we commit or when we make mistakes, some action has to be taken. So this is a sort of there is a disciplinary committee. All the team members will sit for the interview and they will call for an interview. So this kind of interview will help the workers or the employees or the professionals or the participants to check or to set right their behavior, and in a way that will also boost up their morale, so their conduct can be improved, their conduct can be reflected, their conduct can be changed, their conduct can be definitely altogether improved. And some companies very with great facilities, or some companies which are very hugely popular, and some companies that are very reputed, come up with all these kinds of interview, like disciplinary interview. And when I explain all those things, I also want to say that I also want to caution you that not every kind of placement interview or you are appearing, or that particular kind of company you have, will not necessarily have all these types of interview, but there definitely some companies, they may not name as this very specifically as disciplinary interview, or kind of like termination interview, or kind of persuasive interview, conflict resolution interview, but definitely they will arrange for an interview. And even in many organizations that they are happening, and these interviews are also very transparent. It is just to avoid this kind of one-to-one or face-to-face kind of dealing or settlement. So it should not be between only the boss and the employee, or it should not in any company. It should not happen only between two people. So that will be taken on personal basis. So for avoiding such a problem, for avoiding such thing, they will they will appoint, or they will settle the issues through this disciplinary committee, and they will settle the issue. The next type of interview you have to understand is stress interview. So, if it sounds very unnatural, then it is not. It is not a strange thing. Yes, it is. It sounds very unnatural, but it is not unrealistic. It is indeed realistic. But then companies have these kinds of interviews, and students who are appearing for this placement have to be aware of all these issues, or aware of all these interviews, or should be aware of all these aspects, especially when they are going out of their colleges, and just before they are about to appear for any interview, so that they get mentally fit, or they can be fit for the upcoming interview. Right. So what is this stress interview? So stress interview sounds very stressful. No, it is very challenging. It is very challenging. Creating an emotionally chaotic setting puts a candidate under psychological stress to see if they can really withstand the pressure. So, and still, and see, let me explain you, break down into simpler thoughts. It's just like to create a kind of, a chaotic situation, and just to put you in that situation, and to test your patience, and to test your performance, and test your behavior, and to test your competence, and how you will perform, respond, and react under these situations. So to see all these things, they will create what imaginary kind of stress interview, or they will ask you to think about this imagined situation, and how you will perform, or how you will respond, or how you will react. So this will eventually help the company to what is like select the candidates who are suitable for for that position they are looking for. So very challenging. So these are all problem solving skills that you need. Students, in soft skills, we talk about problem skills, problem resolving. Okay, problem solving skills. So resolving or solving skills. We teach learners. Why? It's just to make them aware of the problems and how they can really deal with them. So if they are tuned to that kind of behavior, where they can solve their problems very easily, and they can really come up with different solutions. So this is very challenging. Creating an emotionally chaotic setting, puts a candidate under severe psychological pressure to see if they can crack and remain calm, even thrive under, even continue or persist under pressure. So this is very stressful, but at the same time, this kind of interview will enable the candidate to face any kind of serious challenging interviews. So you don't have to worry about it. Now, having discussed all the types of interviews, let me take you through all these types of interviews. Job interview, information interview, persuasive interview, exit interview, evaluation interview, counseling interview, conflict resolution interview, termination interview, disciplinary interview, stress interview, requisites of an interview. So, requisites of an interview is not the type of interview, but we have types of interview till stress interview. So these are some types of interview. So now, after having said all the types of interviews, you might think the requisites of an interview is also one type. No. Requisites of an interview, that is requirements of an interview. That means requisites, like what are the essential requirements, what are the things that are needed for appearing for an interview. Now, your nature is very important. Your nature, the nature of this interview will be like this, like orality is involved. What is the nature? That means what sort of interview or what sort of nature is there or will be there for interview. So the nature will be like generally orality. So it is oral, as you all know. And even though when you appear at an interview, you speak, at the same time you have to demonstrate not only that you say, not only that you speak, but also you demonstrate. That means you act. You have to reflect on your verbal skill, non-verbal skills also. Orality means verbal skills and non-verbal skills. Though orality is involved, even then all your body language skills or other non-verbal skills are also involved and are part of this nature. So now there are some things you need to do. So what are the things? You have to develop confidence. You have to develop confidence. You have to, that is important, very important. So how do you develop? We'll discuss too. So like there are strategies you can develop confidence, and very often you can go to where personal spaces where you can practice all these interview skills when you are standing before the mirror. And so there are ways you can really develop this confidence. Next, to develop confidence, and the things you have to do is like to arm yourself with information. So you have to arm yourself. That means like you have to be ready with the information. You have to be well aware of the information. So what is it like? So arm yourself with it. What sort of information? You have to inquire about the company. You have to inquire about the job that you are going to apply for. So you have to understand when the company got established and when was it established and what are its expectations, what are its goals and what are its objectives, what are its like everything, not only about the package that you are interested in knowing or in understanding, but also you have to understand all the things that I have mentioned. You have to understand the history of the company also. So you have to understand the history of the company, and then definitely you can think and you can achieve the target. And then next, to make use of your intelligence. To make use of your intelligence, so that is also very important. To deal with interview efficiently. So to make use of your intelligence is something that you need to do. Also to deal with interview efficiently. So I mean you should be able to deal very efficiently, right? Next, to understand needs and expectations. So you have to understand needs and expectations of the companies. That's what I have mentioned. So if you can really understand the needs and expectations of the company, and then to use language effectively. Right. So we are discussing the things that we need to do, right? So to develop confidence, to arm yourself with information, to make use of your intelligence, to deal with interview efficiently, and to understand needs and expectations of the company. Also, you need to use your language effectively. You need to use your language very cleverly and very effectively. And also, you need to recognize your strengths. You need to recognize your weaknesses also. So, recognizing your strengths and weaknesses is also very important. So, what are the things that you need to do? Confidence should be built up, and informative, you should be informative. You should be intelligent enough. You should be efficient enough to tackle. You should be able to understand the needs and expectations of the company, and also you should be able to use language effectively, and also should know your strengths and weaknesses. Now, some requisite qualities you need to have. Now, confidence. Confidence is that what we've been reiterating, stressing, emphasizing. That stands prior. That stands prominent. Right? Confidence. Attitude also. So what is this attitude? Is it attitude is different. Attitude is that your natural ability. Okay, your natural ability of having this kind of skill or an art, or it could be an art, or it could be a talent, it could be a skill, or it could be anything like confidence, attitude. So you should have this natural talent for that. So if you're very good at programming and naturally you're good at Python, or like could be your communication skills, or it could be your problem solving skills, or sciences, or like technology related. So you are a tech savvy by nature, and you are so much skillful, and that's where you can really step into this success zone. So if you have this aptitude, that means a natural ability for acquiring something. So you are born with this talent, and you are innate. So if you have this kind of aptitude, and also having very natural ability to do a particular task, so you are able to do a particular task, and very naturally you are trying to perform it very easily. So you need to have aptitude, and also you should have attitude. So is that different from something that you learn? Attitude is different from learning. Yes, you acquire is something that you learn, and attitude is something that which you have very naturally. And it's also you have attitude, and attitude is very important, and the kind of attitude you have, the kind of like importance, or the kind of the kind of attitude you should have, behavioral pattern is very important. And then team spirit is also important, and how you mingle with them, and how you handle them, how you handle the behavior. And they have so many behavioral issues, so how you handle them and how you do them, all these things are very, very important. So confidence, attitude, behavioral pattern, team spirit are very important. So whether you are right or wrong, whatsoever, rejected, selected, objected, dejected, subjected, you have to speak. So that is where your test is. So now what you have to do is you have to choose your language, which is very formal. Choose your language, which is formal. Know your strengths and weaknesses. Overestimate and underestimate is very. You should not overestimate yourself. At the same time, you should not underestimate yourself also. So overestimation is important. On the same token, you should not underestimate your abilities. So you have to choose and pick up the language very carefully and naturally. So you have to be very, very careful when you're performing. Now I have brought up a quotation by John Singleton. Very often, the difference between the person hired and the person rejected is not who is better candidate, but who is rather better prepared for the interview. I repeat, very often the difference between the person hired and the person rejected is not who is the better candidate, but who is rather better performed for the interview. You have to understand it's not the person who is very great, but a person who prepares well, who is a rather better, well prepared person is somebody this company is looking for. So that kind of thing you have to remember. Now, let me make you understand the process of job interviews. So what do? They will screen your applications. Okay, so they will go through your application. So they skim through your application and appraisal of CVs or resumes. So that means they will judge your CVs and then they give you competency tasks sometimes and also psychological tasks. So first thing they say is your CV. So that is very important. So after that is examined, they will perform competency tasks, right? So sometimes they have psychological tests also. Sometimes, so these are the rounds. They eliminate people or screen people through group discussions, right? So what are the tips you can have? Prepare yourself mentally, because unless or until you are a confident person, you will not be able to participate in an interview. So for that, you can look up many different magazines and get updated with knowledge and trends. So what to do? You have to feel confident. So you get confidence when you have speaking skills. That's what we've been discussing. And we have this. And also you have to refer to updated magazines just to look for the expectations or some trends or some suggestions and tips that you will have to perform and what the company is really looking for. So under such expectations of the recruiters. So when you are applying for, you have to understand the expectations. That is a point I'm trying to say. So understand the expectations of the recruiters when you're applying for a job. That is you have to be very judgmental and you have to be very planned. Okay, so you have to be clear of your purpose, and clarity of thought and expression are very important. So you have to have this clear, you have to clear your doubts in your mind, and you have to have this clear conscience, and you have to have this clear expression at the same time, and clarity of thought should be there, and clarity of thinking, clear reasoning, clear thinking. All these are very essential. All these are very required for the successful accomplishment of an interview. So these are some tips. Like one is you have to prepare yourself mentally. So you go before a mirror and stand and practice. Talk to yourself. Speak spontaneously. Pick up and choose languages. And that's where definitely you can step into success. And who will not take you or who will not hire you. Definitely. Okay. Your CV's preparation is also very important. After the CVs are examined, definitely there will be competency tasks. So your preparation of CV is also very important. So with these thoughts and reflections on this particular topic, I would end my presentation saying that it's not how able you are, but it is all about how better you prepare for the interview you are appearing for. Thank you so much.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.